Hello there. It's Scott Moyer of Scott Moyer Music and Production, and I'm here with Bob Allen of KADY TV, and we're going to talk about music education and learning different instruments like the guitar, the bass, the piano, the drums and drum set, percussion, music theory, and also vocals. And even if people wanted to put a band together, we're going to talk about putting bands together because I work in a studio also where we can actually rehearse bands and we can record bands. That's over in Agoura Hills. Go ahead, Bob, ask a few questions.
Well, Scott, why don't you give everybody your background, okay, of how you grew up, and you've told it to me on many occasions, and I think it would be interesting for everybody to know how you were literally where you were born and your education.
Well, I could go back to where I was born in Wilmington, Delaware, at the Wilmington Memorial Hospital, which is no longer there. But grew up in Wilmington, Delaware, eventually moved with my family and my father, who worked with DuPont. We got transferred to New Jersey, where I got an interest in studying drums. And so I actually took drum lessons from a lovely drum teacher named Mr. Richards. My dad would drive me over all across about a half hour away from where we lived in Ridgewood, New Jersey, in Bergen County, and he would sit in the car and wait for me to come out after my little half-hour drum lesson. So I did that for about 2 years, and then we got transferred to Hong Kong. My dad joined the international department in Hong Kong, and we got transferred over there. And with my mother's background, being born in Kirin, Manchuria, and living in China from 1918 to 1935, we ended up in Hong Kong, and I joined a band over there. I'll cut to the chase. I joined a band called the Beachcombers and played drums with them. We did the entire Beatles' first album on Parlophone Records. It was the first album released in England back in 1963, a month after it came out. And we learned the entire album, and we're probably the only group in the world that was playing the Beatles' entire album from front to back in a place of all places, Hong Kong. And we would do gigs at the Hong Kong Hilton with on the same bill as the very famous jazz musician and composer Thelonious Monk and the Thelonious Monk Trio. And we did gigs all over Hong Kong at yacht clubs and tennis clubs and golf clubs. And we played at churches. There was a Catholic church every Friday, and we played there. We had a great fan base. We had articles written in the newspaper 3 times with all of our backgrounds and bios, and very high interest in the group because we became very well known over there back in those days.
Did you go
And
to school? Did you go to high school over there?
I went to high school over there. I was at age 14, 15, and 16. And at age 17, I came back to the United States. I spent a little time in Taiwan for 6 months, going to school at an American school. When I was in Hong Kong, I was going to a British school called King George V, and had 56 different nationalities in it, and everybody was really cool. They had great sports. Didn't have a lot of baseball, but I was on the cricket team, and I also ran track and did high jumping and played tennis, and became Hong Kong's water skiing champion with slalom tricks and jumps. So I was basically a jock who had interest in a lot of things like art and music. And my interest in music always was a fun thing for me to do. I bought a guitar in Barcelona, Spain, when we were traveling around the world. I traveled around the world like 3 times before I was age 17.
Wow.
So I've seen everything from Europe, Greece, and up and down the Rhine, and the Egyptian pyramids. I've ridden the camels. been to Agra and Taj Mahal. You know, I've been to the top of the Jungfrau, you know, in Switzerland, and traveled all over, you know, Geneva and Zurich and all over Europe, Spain, Barcelona, Madrid, you name it, been there, done that, and that's all before age 17, and all through the Far East as well, Japan, Taiwan, Thailand, and Malaysia, and India was a lot. It was fascinating because of the people are there's like 1.4 billion people in India, so there are people falling out of the double-decker buses. You know,
Yeah.
as you know what I mean. It was just a really fascinating life growing up in Hong Kong, way different than had I grown up in New Jersey, where my biggest goal was to become the quarterback of the football team. You know, so that never happened. But I did
You
end
got
up.
a you had a worldwide experience as a young person
Oh yeah.
that had to have something to do with what you decided to do with your life. And that's what this is all about, letting everybody know who Scott Moyer is.
Well, I have a perspective on the world, and then because I play many, many instruments, because I decided to learn them, I have a really wide perspective and deep perspective on music. Uh, I took lots and lots of music courses at the University of North Carolina, where I graduated in 1971. Don't tell anybody that year. With a degree in psychology. And but I took all these music courses and got all A's in my music courses, and I really didn't care much about psychology. So I continued on with music, and I ended up my senior year. I was chosen with my band in my college years. I played in a lot of bands, playing all over the South. We had uh, Hit Attractions was the name of our booking agent out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and they booked us in every college, every university, VPI, VMI, University of Virginia, Georgia Tech, Duke, University of North Carolina, NC State, at fraternities, bars, clubs, parties, you name it. We played everywhere over those 4 years that I was at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, where I also played varsity soccer. Right. So I got into school early because I was chosen to be on the soccer team because I was the most valuable player of Delaware County. So so what happens is that you know I ended up playing with Chuck Berry my senior year,
Wow.
and I was chosen to back him up on drums. And the Allman Brothers were on the same bill. They were backstage waiting to go on after Chuck was finished. And the group called Spirit, who had a hit song with I Got a Line on You, Babe, they played there the same afternoon. And Jay Giles' band from Boston also played there. Kate and Alex Taylor performed, and Muddy Waters performed, all on the same bandstand during the day and into the evening. And I have some wonderful pictures that my brother took of the gig I did with Chuck Berry, and it's also on YouTube. It's live.
Oh.
It's filmed. I
Well,
didn't know that.
those are the things. Those are the things that you have to put together a playlist, okay, with the links to everything that you have on, say, YouTube, okay.
Well,
So
that's you know, I have myself playing piano. I've got really. I'm just playing a grand piano, playing "Let It Be." I'm playing guitar, playing like an Eric Clapton song, "I Can Change the World," and
wow,
I'm doing an 11 and a half minute um, drum clinic for one of my students at his home. And that's all filmed on YouTube as well. If anybody wants to see them, I'll be glad to post them up somewhere. But they're on YouTube under Scott Moyer and Scott Moyer Music or whatever. There's a lot of stuff I've seen that talks about my background, my bio, resume, and whatnot on YouTube. So what happens is that after the University of North Carolina, I went to Boston and played with a guy named John Butcher, who played all.
how old were you at that time?
I was 23. I turned 23 in June. I have another birthday coming up this coming June, right? So it happens every June for some reason, I don't know. But I went to Boston and it was too cold up there, and I really didn't really like staying in that kind of cold because I was used to Hong Kong and North Carolina, and I got out of Boston and moved to Washington D.C. And I was hired at a place called Sounds Reasonable Recording Studios, where I wrote commercials for Kawasaki motorbikes, K Jewelers, and national banks. And then I had Emmylou Harris singing on my Kawasaki motorbike commercials, and all these wonderful musicians that came in and played on my commercials. But I was given the opportunity to compose commercials. So that's where I started writing music. And that was 1972. In 1970, I was hired from the University of North Carolina to be the music director for a play at the Folger Shakespearean Library, where I played drums and music directed the entire music for this play that was a hit play all summer long, and it ended up going to off Broadway. It was all University of North Carolina actors and players, and the music was written by the same people who wrote Country Roads, Take Me Home, Country Roads, Bill and Taffy Danoff, and they became really, really good friends because they liked the way I treated their music. They wrote all this beautiful music for this play called Dionysus Wants You, and about the god of wine, and it was quite a thrilling experience for like a 21-year-old being the music director in Washington, D.C., especially at the beautiful Folger Shakespearean Library right down by the Capitol. So then Bill and Taffy invited me over to their apartment to listen to a song that they had written, and it turned out to be Country Roads. So I was one of the first people that got to hear Country Roads before John Denver did.
Wow.
So this is what happens when you're in the music business and you play authentically well. People appreciate that, and they include you in their social world, or they kind of assume that you know everything about music. I wasn't writing a whole lot of songs back then, so I didn't really know about the art and craft of songwriting, but I got into that very, very deeply to the point where when I moved to Los Angeles, I was hired to play drums on a film soundtrack, and then they wanted me to write and sing.
When did you transfer to Los Angeles for the first time?
1976.
Wow.
I came out in 1976 and started working at a place called Studio Instrument Rentals because I didn't know anybody in town, and that's at Gower and Sunset, and it's the bowels of the music business. And so I ended up, being at the head of the drum department. Said one really fascinating thing that happened to me. There were many things that happened. Like I met Ringo Starr, Dr. John, and Ronnie Wood, all in the same room. Because I had to work with them to set up some of the equipment. That's part of the job that you had to do at Studio Instrument Rentals. And so I hung out with them for a little bit. But I have many, many stories of all the fascinating, really brilliant musicians that I met during that period of time. But one really fascinating thing was that I got a call to deliver a set of drums to the Steely Dan recording session. And that was on Sunset Boulevard at a place there called something. It was on Sunset Boulevard and between Sunset and Hollywood. At Crossroads of the World, that's the name of the little place that it was. It was a place on Sunset called Crossroads of the World, which is very famous. If you lived in Hollywood, you knew where it was and what it was. And so I delivered a set of drums there to the Steely Dan session for the recording of the song Asia, which is the name of the album that they did. And it turns out, and because I tuned the drums before I delivered them, it turns out that recording session has become one of the single most famous songs ever recorded.
Wow.
And this is just, I didn't start working at SIR just because I wanted to become somebody who delivered equipment. I'm going from
Sure.
teaching music back in Washington D.C. In 1973, and then working in a studio and recording commercials and writing.
Who were you teaching music to when you were in Washington?
Oh, I was teaching private homes in Potomac, Maryland. I lived in Bethesda, Maryland, right across from NIH.
The students
The
were
students were everywhere. Sometimes I would teach in a music store. I would teach the 10-year-old Korean kid who didn't know who the Beatles were back then in 1973. He was 10 years old now. Go figure how old he is now. 1973, a little Korean kid didn't know who the Beatles were.
he's
I would teach him
52
how to
years
play.
older. He's 52 years older than that.
Yeah, I would teach him how to play guitar, and I taught all kinds of guitar players. Uh, Somebody turned me on to this place to teach, right? So I started teaching, and I haven't stopped since because I really enjoy teaching.
So that's been your real passion, isn't it?
Well, everything in music is my passion.
Mhm.
I'm not limited to, I'm taking art classes out here and I love art. I love sports when I was playing varsity sports and water skiing and playing tennis. I played number one in tennis and I was the number one, soccer player, as I mentioned before, in all of Delaware County outside of Philadelphia. So that's how I got into University of North Carolina with an early acceptance because they wanted me on the soccer team. So I did the jock thing, I did the sports thing, and I had in my back pocket, I had the music thing going on the whole time. And I always knew that music was going to be the thing that I was probably going to do uh, rather than sports all my life. You know, I mean, I took up golf and lowered my scores from the 90s down to lower the 70, 71, 72. I shot a 69, which was my lowest. So I dabbled at that, and it's just fun learning sports like it is fun learning and teaching music.
Well, that's competition. You've also learned competition.
Oh yeah, we wanted to be number one at whatever we did. I didn't get into anything to be number 20, you know. I
Sure.
mean, you know what I mean? So I teach my students. If I had all my students with me right here in this room, they'd fill up this room and they would blow you away with how good they have become. It's my students who can speak louder than I could about myself. I mean, I don't need to ramble on and on. If you want to find out about me, I can talk about what it is that I've done. But my students have had hit records, number one and number two hit records. Tom Selleck's son, I taught drums to from age 12 or 13 all the way through high school to when he went before he went to UCLA. And then a few years after that, by the time he was 24, he had two number one and number two hit record with a band called Tonic in 1995. Right, and they were on the Tonight Show, and he got endorsements for drums, for sticks, for cymbals. He got endorsements from all these famous drum companies, and then he got into acting with his father, and he has six children now, and lives off the Lynn exit in uh,
Uh,
Newbury Park. So many of my students have sent me CDs and videos of their performances. Many of my students have gone to. This is really important. They've gone to Juilliard Music School in New York. They, they've gone to the Oberlin Conservatory of Music. They have gone to the Berklee School of Music. I had four students of mine out of one school go to Berklee College of Music up in Boston, all at the same year, right? So those students have turned out to be phenomenal. They've been touring all over the United States, recording over 7, 8 albums, and have a huge fan base. It's a band called Dopapod, Dopapod, and they're really well known on the East Coast and all up and down the East Coast and Midwest. And sometimes they come out here and perform. They've actually played in the very famous outdoor performance stage in Colorado. There's like an in the round outdoor stage. It's very famous, and they've performed there several times. You know, so it's my students that have done incredibly well. Even my present day students that I'm teaching on guitar and drums, who are playing like unbelievably well. And this is after several years of teaching them the instruments. And like say for tomorrow, I'm going to be going to a luncheon off of the Olympic and the 405 uh, with one of my students who is just graduating now from high school.
Wow.
And their parents invited me down to have lunch with them at 1:30, which is going to be a bitch getting down there because it's Friday rush hour, right? So so anyway, I have really great relationships with my students. I taught in the Palisades for 40 years.
Well, and that was the thing I was going to bring up. Okay.
Yeah.
After all of this teaching, let everybody know how the fires have affected you.
Oh, I will. Yeah. The
Or,
95% of my students that I taught over 40 years lost their multi-million dollar homes in the Palisades. 95% of them. I
uh,
called many of them when they were on the way out of the Palisades, running for their lives. And the young lady that I'm going to go have lunch with tomorrow, with 15 other girlfriends of hers, and her father and her mother, who are wonderful, wonderful people, um, they lost their home. And another one of my students, who is a Chinese woman, who has two children. One of them lives in New York, and the other one goes to UCLA and is an art and an economics major. They lost their $6.7 million home, which I had had dinner at 5 times
wow.
in the Palisades. The whole home completely disintegrated, and all the art that the young daughter did is all gone. So these are I have lost a tremendous amount of income.
Well,
Uh,
that's this, and that's what this whole thing really is all about, starting your podcast.
yeah,
You are basically now looking to start teaching again to a new group of students, shall we say.
well, here's the thing. I always welcome new students who are very motivated and highly curious about learning music because it really takes a lot of attention and a lot of dedication to learn any instrument just to play it. You can play like you can be a dilettante at it. You can kind of play a little bit, or you could choose to really go at it and learn all the learn a lot of songs. Learn like say on the guitar, finger picking and rhythm, and music theory applied to the instrument. I teach music theory very deeply, and I apply it to the piano, the bass, and the guitar, and also to vocal studies as well. So because I teach a lot of instruments, I always apply music theory to the different instruments that are melodic and harmonic. Uh, and then on the drums during the pandemic, in addition to 50 years of compiled material, I started during the pandemic just writing brand new, fresh rhythmic ideas and writing them down. Because I transcribe music. I have over 1,000 pages now, over 8,000 exercises that I never even played before, right? And that just gives you an idea of how creative, how infinitely creative that playing rhythm is.
This is what we have to really try and get out to the community,
Yeah,
is that anyone that has a child, okay, or a son or a daughter
right.
that really has an affinity for music, you would not have been around had not the fire caused basically for you to lose a lot of your students. Okay.
Well, the store that I taught at, I went there. I went there for 40 years. It started in 1979, right? That store is gone. They're actually having a benefit for the store on July 20th.
So what we can tell everybody that Ben Franklin was really wrong. There were three things for sure in life: death, taxes, and change.
Oh,
And
that's
this
for
is a
sure.
period of your life where change is certainly taking place, as it is in mine. Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, it was one of the delightful changes is moving into this apartment that I found after uh, losing my place of 14 years in Camarillo and meeting Bob Allen. To say because Bob is the guy that set up KADY TV, and he's really dedicated to letting people know what's going on in the community. And this is a passion of his, and he has a very fascinating history as well. So it goes both ways, you know. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Appreciate it. Just trying to get the word out so that people do know
Well,
that.
this was a perfect start, Scott.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that we basically, if I could put your goal is you want to try and create something for the next generation of students in the
Well,
music industry.
well, I've already done that with 50 years of teaching, but you know, it's not over. You know, I've
Change
got a,
is,
s- I've got,
yeah.
I'm managing Glenn Campbell's former home recording studio in Agora Hills, and it's a $250,000 studio, all set up with all the equipment you would need to make records. I mean, we have Aaron Brockovich came in and did a voiceover recently. You know,
Wow.
Ed Harris, you know, the actor Ed Harris,
Yeah.
he was in there doing voiceovers for 2 days. Uh, Jason Momoa, I guess he's a real tall guy actor. He comes in there all the time and does voiceovers with a group of people out of Italy, you know, and then we have the group Pablo Cruz that records over there, the famous group that had hit records in the late '70s, the early '80s. Pablo Cruz, the bass player for Pablo Cruz, is my sound engineer. So we have, and then every Wednesday I go over there and teach a piano class and a drum class to over 20 adults with learning disabilities.
Wow.
Some of them can't speak. Some of them are very skilled. But you know, you never know how skilled somebody is until you sit with them
Exactly.
with a great deal of patience and lead them to be able to play things.
Isn't that what being a teacher is all about?
Yeah, well, you know, you have to work overtime with these adults with learning
Yeah.
disabilities. But
Yeah.
I've already had two Christmas shows where they performed beautifully on the drums and vocally, and with all the things that I've taught them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think, and here's my suggestion, Scott. I think that we've done enough now to get something started, and I think let the community that's watching this know that you're going to do on a regular basis. You're going to start talking about certain instruments and certain, what you're going to do. But I think that for the first time, getting something out, we're going to get social media started and get you well known to a community that is desirous of having music as something in their family.
it sounds good. And we can leave on a really good, beautiful note. I'll play this really nice chord
That's
and leave and
beautiful.
and leave it at that.
Hey, you got that.